Hi, this is Amy with the Hag Reads back again. This is 2 videos in one day, but the other one had kind of hit the 20-25 minute mark. So I wanted to do a separate video for, I think this is a Friday Reads. It's what I'm going to read over the weekend. Is that right? Do we call that a Friday Reads? I hope I'm right. But anyway, it's what I'm going to read over this weekend. And I wanted to make a separate video of it because it's not just, what's due on my library card, which has been what's been going on recently. One of the things I'm doing is when I read Carmilla, and I was thinking about Carmilla, Varney the Vampire, and Dracula, and then some other things I've been reading, I decided that I'm going to quit some series that no longer make me happy to read. Above and beyond, what you should read or what you want to read, do you feel like is a kind of a reading responsibility type of reading in terms of either classics or history or whatever it is you feel like you should read, and that's fine. But I'm talking about series that, what am I giving up? I'm giving up the Carpathians series. I am giving up the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. I am giving up almost all urban fantasy and paranormal romance. Because I find that, these are series that used to make me happy to read. I used to love reading them despite their tropes and their stereotypes and their very formulaic writing. They used to bring me joy to read. It used to be something, it was mind candy, but anymore, as of late, it's just been frustrating me. It doesn't bring me joy or happiness. It doesn't relax me. It just kind of, I read each one and I'm like, I didn't really, I'm spending hours reading these series because I feel an obligation to it. And I'm not saying I will never go back to these series, but right now I think I just need to break away from that type of reading because it's not making me happy. And why read if it doesn't? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you reading it. I'm not saying I'm better than that. Because in Black Dagger Brotherhood and the Carpathian series, I am way, in the 20s in terms of how far along in the series I've gotten. And I genuinely did get happiness and truly enjoy these books for a good long time. But where I am right now in my life, that's either not what I want to read, or for whatever reason, I'm focusing on what I don't like about it as opposed to what I do like about it. And so I'm not getting joy from that reading. And that is the kind of reading that should definitely bring you joy beyond a shadow of a doubt. So for now, I'm kind of done with that stuff. So I called out, a number of my library books and stuff like that. I still have, and I did another call just yesterday of things that I just know I'm not going to get to in the next month. So why even have the books checked out? I put, what I'm giving up that's in the house on my Goodreads want to read. I tick that button for most of the books, and I'll get back to them when I am better able to. But I am changing the function of my reading for now. And this was supposed to happen earlier this year, but I just didn't get there for whatever reason. I want to read more history books, history of the world, history of different time periods, history of different nations, history of specific peoples. And I do want a large focus of that to be on Western Europe, or the Western, canon. But also on some of the more classical literature and stuff like that. I also want to read more classic books. Not because I feel like I need to or I should. Not an outside pressure kind of thing, but there's a lot of reference to these types of works in modern literature, or they're derivative of them, or they, in some way influenced more modern writers. And so I want to read them in that respect of I think often I don't recognize things that maybe I would like to, or that I should, because I haven't read these more classic works. And I'm never too old to read whatever type of book, right? So my reading is going to be changing in that way. That's not to say that I'm going to give up fiction reading at all, but I do also want to make a greater effort to read nonfiction in my areas of interest. That would be religious, religion, religious history, paganism, um, psychology of all flavors. Um, so, um, and then I just have a smattering of other interests, books like The Omnivore's Dilemma, or like the one I read earlier, Planet Walker, those type of ecological, environmentalism books. I would like to be reading more of that. So my reading will change, and how quickly I'm reading will change. I think I talked about this in another video. For this year, I'm trying to read 365 books, and it will be the most books I've ever read in a year. I don't achieve Steve Donahue levels of reading. I don't know how he does it. I know it has to do with sub-vocalizing, where you're thinking the words in your head as you're reading them on the page. But I have never been able to achieve anything like that, and I think it's phenomenal that he can read like thousands of books in a year. But 365 will be the most books I've ever read in a year if I accomplish it. And I'm on track to accomplish it. I have, I think, almost 240 read, and I am 1 or 2 books ahead of schedule for the year. So I think I will hit that goal. And this weekend's reading will certainly help, because it's all going to be children's fiction. Everything I read this weekend, with the exception of an ebook I'm trying to finish that's coming up due. And that may, in fact, be a young adult book. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to look at that. But I think without a doubt I will hit 365 this year. But because I want to read more nonfiction, because I want to read historical, because I want to read classics, these require slower reading, not because they're harder to read, but because I really feel like with the reading I'm doing now, I don't have to think about it a lot. It's mostly mind candy. It's just floss reading. I don't have to think about it really hard. But the change in my reading that's coming, these are books I will have to think about a great deal. A lot of the texts that I want to finish from my classes at the university, for my psychology and religious studies books that, we didn't read all of them, and I would like to finish them, and I would like to draw from their sources and read some of that. That's reading that I have to read 1, 2, 3, sometimes even 4 times before I really start to absorb and to allow myself time to think about and absorb the concepts and apply them to, what I know about in my life, what I know about in historical context, and all of that sort of thing. It's not the kind of book that you whip through and you toss it over your shoulder and you go, done. These are books that I feel like I have to stop and think about, and maybe even read more than once. So that will fundamentally change how many books I read a month, how many books I could possibly read in a year. It will probably maybe even be less than 52, which has kind of been my standing goal for a lot of years, a book a week. And I may get that far just based on, I will still be reading some series, I will still be reading some fiction, because I like to be reading a nonfiction and a fiction book at the same time, but I'm changing my focus from less fiction to more nonfiction. So even still reading fiction on the side, I won't read as many. So I'll be lucky next year if I reach 30 or 52 books, and I'm okay with that, because I want to absorb more and learn more from it. And since I had my heart attack, well, both of them, and I've had these health problems, my thinking, it takes more time for me now to absorb concepts and apply them. So, once upon a time, I could easily read 100 books in a year and easily absorb the material, but that is not the case now. So I will be a much slower, more methodical reader than I have been in the past. And part of the reason I'm doing this is because I did lose things. I lost a lot of my understanding of grammar. You may have noticed that I think sometimes I say that, I know for a fact I say the wrong word, and I often don't realize I've said the wrong word. I think I did it in a video a couple weeks ago, or maybe a few days ago, where I was talking about Bloody Mary, and you go to the mirror to say it 3 times. Well, what I said was window, and I'm not sure why I said window. Like, that happens a lot. And about 60% of the time, as I'm saying the word, I realize I'm saying the wrong word. But a good 40% of the time, I will say the wrong word, not know I've said the wrong word. And people don't tell me that I've said the wrong word. And I wish they would. I think it's out of kindness. They don't want to embarrass me. But when I don't know I've said it, and I've asked my son, if you know I'm saying the wrong thing, please tell me. Because the more times I catch it, maybe there's a way to kind of fix that. So I have kind of blips like that. The most famous one being the time that I was riding in a car with a friend and I had a headache. And it was very bad. It was almost migraine worthy headache. And what I told her was quite, you know, with a lot of feeling, I have a hot dog. And I realized it as it was coming out of my mouth. And my head hurt so bad, but I couldn't stop laughing. And she said, "What?" I said, "I meant I have a headache. I don't know why I said hot dog." And we both laughed about it. But since then, I've noticed it more frequently. And I think sometimes when I'm talking to people, I can see in their face that possibly I've said the wrong word. And they don't know it. And they clearly don't want to tell me I've said the wrong word. And I don't want... I don't know. Maybe I should just be more forward. Did I just say the wrong word? And maybe they'll tell me. But in the case of a video, like, I don't have the editing software to go back and put in, oops, I meant mirror. So if you notice that I've said the wrong word and I don't pick it up in the video and correct myself, feel free to comment and let me know I've said the wrong word. That is fine. So let me get on with what I'm actually going to read this weekend. And I showed these before when I originally got them. So this is part of what I'm going to read this weekend. This is the second half of the original Goosebumps series. I think it's 21 or 26 books. Let me see here. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So it's 21 books, and it's not specifically just the last, but it's mostly the last. And these don't need to be read in any specific order, so let's see if I can pick this out here. 51, those don't say, 62, 64. Looks like the earliest one is number 36, and then it goes all the way up to the end, which I think is 62 or 63. But there are gaps in there because my library had some books that were kind of high up. But my library kind of stopped around 30 or 32 having them. And then they had a few digitally, which are the ones that were kind of mixed in. And I don't know why they don't have them all. But my guess is that most people only read the first part. And then they kind of age out of this type of book. But I like to read all of a series. And when my kids were originally reading this, I never finished all of them. And the Ohio Library did, in fact, have all of them, but the Scottsdale Library does not. So I had to get these. I got them through eBay, from Paperback Swap. I got a few of them from my library, I think only 2, because they don't have this sort of thing very often at the little store that's attached to my library where they sell the used books and donations that they receive. So this is 21 books, but... You know, anybody who's read one of these, you know that they're, you know, I think they're around 125 pages each. Because if I look at one, they're all about the same. This is 122. And, you know, that this is the type of spacing and the word, so it's really only for an hour or 2 at most if you're reading, and I'll be reading slow this weekend. I'm not going to rush through it. I want to enjoy them, you know, that's kind of the point of doing this. Give me a second. I just need to put these somewhere so I can get to the other books I'm going to read this weekend. See, I feel like that's a bad spot and they're going to fall. So if you hear them fall, that's why. And then the second set of books that I want to read this weekend, I've been trying to get. I got 5 of them at the Goodwill bookstore a long time ago, and then I forgot I had them. They were just sitting in the back of a shelf. With some other stuff in front of it, and I realized I was missing 2 books because there are 7 books in the series, and so I got those and they don't match, so I won't keep this as a set. I will probably buy a hardcover set later on for my personal library, just because these are classics And we have toyed with the idea of fostering children when we get settled, because of some experiences that my son had when his father and I were getting divorced. And so I feel like it's a kind of a pay it forward thing. So I would like to have at that point, some, a personal library that has a young adult literature in it that I feel like everybody should read. And I don't want to like make kids read them, but if they're available, there's a chance that anybody living in the house might read it if it's just there and available, and they get bored enough. So it's the Narnia series, The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. So the first book, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which is actually the only book I have ever read, and I'm going to reread it. The Prince Caspian, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, The Silver Chair, A Horse and His Boy, and The Magician's Nephew, and The Last Battle. So I want to get those finished this weekend as well. And I think that's a pretty easy reading list. Starting tonight, and it's already 8 o'clock, so I'll maybe start one of the Goosebumps books, and I'm probably finish that at least one tonight, if not one and a half. I have some knitting videos I'm trying to watch. I have 2 movies from the library I need to watch this weekend, even given all that, and that's so 21 and then 7, so that's 28 books, but they're genuinely children's literature, and so I think it will go reasonably fast. I think it might say the Chronicles of Narnia might take me a little longer, because obviously those, the Goosebumps are just horror light. That's Stephen King for kids. That's prepping young readers for hopefully horror lovers in the future. Hopefully those are spurring an interest in horror for as they enter adulthood, because most people don't read horror. They that the readership for that type of book is relatively small, I think. Most people, you can see what the mainstream books are. I think that's what most people prefer to read. But I think these are kids that love these will likely grow up to be lovers of the horror genre. So that's what I've got for this weekend. And then also my audiobook, which is, or not audio, but it's a digital ebook, Invitation to Murder by Beth Prentice. And no, that's not a young adult. That's for adults. Maybe it's for, what's the new category? New adult fiction? Is that what it is? A contemporary mystery. It's kind of a cozy mystery type book. And I will talk about that sometime next week or maybe the week after, depending on how quickly I get through my backlog of books I've read so that I can be current. But that's what I'm going to do this weekend. So that's my second video for today, and I will be back tomorrow talking about 3 books in the Past Midnight series. They're the last 3 books in that series by Mara Purnham. I read those and finished them a few days ago, so I will talk about kind of all 3 of those in one go. And they are YA, so that's what I'm going to talk about in my next video. But that's all I've got for today. If you have watched to the end, thank you so much. I hope you are having a wonderful Friday. If it's your true Friday or not, I hope it has been a fantastic day and that you have a great weekend, whether you have to work or not, and that it's filled with things that bring you joy. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend, and I will see you next time. Bye!